All right, Harry, tonight we have a mini Bible study in First Corinthians chapter 10. And it talks about the correlation between the Israelites and the history of Moses bringing them out of Egypt and what that means to a Christian. So let me get started in verse 1. For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud and they all passed through the sea. Is there any background or a little bit of history that you could give us on this verse?
Yeah, so God sent Moses into Egypt to talk to Pharaoh and to get the people of Israel out of Egypt to the promised land. That was what the project was. So it started with the 10 plagues, where the people of Israel were spared, most of them, but with over time, Pharaoh and his people experienced those plagues, and finally, when with the Passover and the death angel, they were ready to let the people of Israel go. So now Moses has this whole group of people, and they're in the town of Goshen in Egypt, and they travel for a few days, and they get to the Red Sea, and now they get stuck there. Oh, how do we get across the sea? And by this time, the Egyptians are chasing after them. God says, we'll go through the sea, and opened up the sea. And then there was a cloud that was leading the people, but the cloud now went behind the people to guard the people of Israel from the Egyptians. So the people of Israel all traveled through the Red Sea, and the cloud followed them. And when the cloud got to all the people of Israel got through, the waters closed in on the Egyptians and got rid of the Egyptian army, and the people of Israel were now home free, but they were in the wilderness. And so they passed through the sea with the cloud, and now they were into the wilderness, which was step A, as you might say. And that compares here to us as we start the journey. We're in Egypt, darkness, not a good place, takes a lot of effort to get out of that and get out of. So we threw the Red Sea into the wilderness, but that's not the promised land. There is still one more place to go, and that's across the Jordan, and we'll get to that. But that's the first step. And as Christians, that's kind of a group event. Everybody that wants to hear the word gets there. It's all, there's steps involved to get started, and now we're in the wilderness. But now we have this life's journey to get through the wilderness across to Jordan. Go ahead.
All right, verse 2. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And what's the correlation there between the baptism of Moses and Jesus?
Yeah, I think it's just drawing it as an analogy. Moses was leading them. Jesus is leading us. Baptism of the Red Sea. And we have a baptism that we go through, initiation, familiarity, and getting started and reading the word, and all those steps that lead into getting started in our walk with God. And he was drawing the analogy here of that as to, that's that, but they're still in the wilderness. They're not across the Jordan.
All right, verse 3. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. Now, a lot of people like to focus on the rock being Christ, but I like to go a little bit deeper here and think this is a group event. Like, they're all participating in that rock with Christ. They're all drinking from these heavenly blessings that God's bestowing upon them. Isn't that fair to say?
Yeah, and it's the manna. Every day, these folks are going to the wilderness, going outside the tent, and in the desert, they're gathering up this manna that God gives them every night. It's like snow, as you might say, and you gather it up, and you can make it into all kinds of things. It's kind of make bread or this or that, and it's heavenly bread that they get every day. All they have to do is gather it, and it's good. And then from time to time, God gave them quail and other things too, and he basically took care of them. And of course, this is similar to where Christians are. They sing the hymns, they read the word, they pray, they meditate, they process all that, and hopefully are growing and falling in love. But there was a lot of struggles there. A lot of these people still, they got the people out of Egypt, but they didn't get Egypt out of the people. And that is a problem that we have too in a Christian walk. A lot of us have a lot of Egypt that we hang around with, the stuff of the world, the stuff that we were partaking in before. And yeah, that is a problem. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to see how much of a problem it was. Verse 5, nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them. Their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. And how can we relate that to ours? Because, see, a lot of people, we like to say, I think we view things wrong. Like, oh, we're brought out of Egypt. We're brought out of Egypt. The question shouldn't be, are we released from the darkness? Because God can release us from the darkness. The true question, which I think is a solo path with you and God himself, is, do I make it to the promised land? Am I able to persevere, fight the good fight, as Paul says, run the race? What do you think about that?
Yeah, there was an event there where Moses sent 12 spies into the land. And these 12 spies, they traveled the whole length of their promised land and went across the Jordan and traveled into the land, the heavenly land of where they were going to go to. And when they came back, it was really, really simple, because Joshua and Caleb, they saw the glory of God. They said, that is a good place where we're going. The other 10 spies, they brought a bad report, an evil report, it says, and they says, man, this is just too hard. Those guys are big, and they got warriors, they got steel wheels on their chariots, they got all this kind of stuff. There's not a chance we'll ever get there. We might as well just go back to Egypt. And that was the report. And Joshua and Caleb did cross to Jordan, the others not. And of course, this story is just a story. Oh, no, not a story. It was a true story, but it was Paul is using it as an example of where we are, because we have to, like Joshua and Caleb, have to see the glory of God and know that we're going to a good place and we can conquer. And they did conquer. But it's an individual event to get across to Jordan. Like, it's not a group event. We all individually stand before God. And another thing that we've read before, or not read before, other things that we know is that God has no grandchildren. We're either children of God or we're not. And we individually have to walk with him. And that starts now. Walking with God, getting comfortable with that, and crossing the Jordan is what it's all about. It's not staying in the wilderness, and just coming out of Egypt is not the answer. The answer is to prepare ourselves for the blessing that we have to finish the job and cross the Jordan, and God does give us the victory if we trust him.
Amen. Thanks, Harry.